What if the story of Australia you know is incomplete? Beyond the familiar tales of explorers, pioneers, and gold rushes, there's a deeper, more ancient story. It's about a people who have called this land home for tens of thousands of years and who, within our living memory, fought a legal battle that would forever change the nation. It's a story of resilience, of a profound connection to country, and a fight for justice that continues today. This is the story of the Wik people of Cape York, a story you almost certainly weren't taught in school. Long before European hands drew the first maps of Australia, the western coast of the Cape York Peninsula in far north Queensland was, and is, Wik country. Now, this isn't a single, monolithic nation. It's more like a confederation of several distinct language groups, all interconnected by culture, kinship, and country. Their traditional lands stretch from the Archer River down to the Edward River, a huge expanse of coastal floodplains, dense forests, and winding rivers. For millennia, the lives of the Wik people were shaped by the rhythms of the land and its two great seasons, the wet and the dry. Their culture is built on a deep spiritual connection to their environment, a worldview where the physical and the sacred are one and the same. This is the dreaming, a complex philosophy that explains the creation of the world by ancestral beings, sets out the laws that govern society, and embeds stories into every single river, rock, and tree. These aren't just myths. They're law, history, and a guide for living, passed down through generations in song, dance, and ceremony. The Wik people were masters of their environment, thriving as hunter-gatherers with an encyclopedic knowledge of the land. They moved with the seasons, hunting, fishing, and gathering the rich variety of foods the coast and rivers provided. Their social structure was, and is, incredibly complex, with kinship systems that dictate relationships, responsibilities, and who is entrusted to care for specific parts of the land. It was a society that had thrived in perfect balance with its surroundings for a period of time so vast it's hard for us to even comprehend. A self-sufficient world, rich in culture and tradition, that was about to be interrupted. The year is 1606. On the other side of the world, Shakespeare is writing King Lear. In Australia, it's just another day in a 60,000-year history. But on the coast of Cape York, a strange ship appears on the horizon. It was the Duifkin, a Dutch vessel captained by Willem Janszoon, on a voyage of exploration. The crew made landfall near a place they would name Cape Keerweer, Dutch for Cape Turnaround, a name that would prove to be oddly prophetic. This moment marks the very first recorded encounter between Europeans and Aboriginal Australian people. And it wasn't a peaceful meeting. Wik oral history, passed down with remarkable accuracy for over 400 years, recounts a violent clash. It tells of the Dutch crew kidnapping women and of Wik warriors fighting back to defend their people and their land, leading to deaths on both sides. This was the first known armed conflict between Europeans and Australia's First Peoples, a brutal opening chapter to a long and complicated history. Janszoon and his crew, finding no spices and facing fierce resistance, did exactly as the name of their cape suggested. They turned around. They left, leaving the Wik people with a story of strange, pale-skinned invaders. Unlike the later arrival of the British, this first contact didn't lead to immediate colonization. For more than a century, life on Cape York largely returned to its ancient rhythms. But the encounter was a warning, a sign of a world that was about to change forever. The next wave of disruption wasn't so brief. Starting in the late 19th century, British colonial expansion finally reached Cape York. This time, the newcomers were here to stay. They brought cattle, sheep, and a completely foreign concept of land ownership. They also brought a legal fiction called terra nullius, the idea that Australia was a land belonging to no one. For the Wik people, this was simply incomprehensible. How could a land so rich in stories, laws, and life, a place that was home to countless generations of their ancestors, be considered empty? Under this false premise, the Queensland government began handing out huge tracts of Wik country as pastoral leases. These were legal grants allowing settlers, or pastoralists, to use the land for grazing livestock. To the colonial authorities, they were just leasing empty crown land. But for the Wik, their home was being given away without their knowledge, without their consent, and without any recognition that they even existed. The impact was devastating. Fences went up, cutting off access to sacred sites and traditional hunting grounds. water sources were dammed or polluted by cattle. Missionaries arrived, seeking to convert and assimilate the Wik people, often separating children from their families and punishing them for speaking their language or practicing ceremonies. Mining companies started to explore the land, seeing only valuable bauxite deposits under the soil, not the culture that thrived on top of it. The traditional way of life, sustained for millennia, was now under constant attack. This wasn't just about losing land. It was about losing everything: culture, spirituality, and the very foundation of their identity. This was the rising conflict that would eventually lead to one of Australia's most important legal battles. By the late 20th century, the Wik people had lived with the consequences of dispossession for generations. But they weren't broken. Their culture, though under immense pressure, had survived. And a new kind of fight was about to begin, a fight inside the courtroom. The groundbreaking Wik decision in 1992 finally overturned the lie of terra nullius, recognizing that a form of native title had survived colonization. This opened a door. The Wik people, led by elders like Stanley Ngeki, saw their chance. In 1993, they filed a claim in the Federal Court of Australia. Their case, however, raised a new and incredibly complicated question. Much of their land wasn't empty. It was covered by those pastoral leases. So, the core of their legal battle was this: did the government's act of granting a pastoral lease completely extinguish or wipe out the native title rights of the traditional owners? The pastoralists and the Queensland government argued yes, it did. They claimed that a pastoral lease granted exclusive possession to the leaseholder, a right that was totally incompatible with any form of native title. It was an all-or-nothing deal. In the first court hearing, the judge agreed, ruling that the leases had indeed extinguished the Wik people's native title. But the Wik weren't giving up. They believed their rights, which had existed since the dreaming, couldn't be erased by a piece of paper granting someone else the right to graze cattle. They appealed the decision, taking their fight all the way to the highest court in the nation, the High Court of Australia. On December 23, 1996, the High Court of Australia delivered its judgment in the case of the Wik peoples v. the state of Queensland. The nation held its breath. The decision, handed down by a slim 4-3 majority, was a stunning and historic victory for the Wik people. The court found that pastoral leases did not automatically grant exclusive possession to the leaseholder. And because of that, granting a pastoral lease did not automatically extinguish all native title rights. Instead, the High Court introduced a radical new idea into Australian law: coexistence. Think of it this way. Imagine your family has owned a huge backyard for centuries. You hunt there, you hold family gatherings there, you visit sacred sites. Now, the government gives a neighbor a piece of paper that says they can walk their dog across your backyard. The Wik decision essentially said that your neighbor's right to walk their dog doesn't mean you no longer own the backyard. It means both sets of rights can exist at the same time. That's coexistence. The court ruled that where there was a direct conflict between the rights of the pastoralist and the rights of the native title holders, the pastoralist's rights would win out. For example, the Wik people couldn't stop a pastoralist from building a dam for their cattle. But, and this is crucial, the existence of the lease didn't wipe the slate clean. The Wik people's rights to hunt, to fish, to conduct ceremonies, and to access their sacred sites could continue, as long as they didn't interfere with the pastoralists' activities. It was a decision that affirmed the enduring connection of the Wik people to their land, a connection that the law finally recognized had not been broken. The moment of victory was electrifying. Wik woman and activist Gladys Taibing-Gumpa famously celebrated on the steps of the High Court with song and dance, a powerful display of cultural resilience. She declared, "My name is Gladys. I'm the hot one. The fire. Bushfire is my totem. I am not afraid of anything." But the political fallout was immediate and immense. The Howard government, along with powerful mining and pastoral lobby groups, launched a fierce campaign against the decision, stoking public fear with claims that people's backyards and farms were now at risk. This resulted in the Prime Minister's controversial 10-point plan, a series of amendments to the Native Title Act designed to significantly wind back the implications of the Wik decision and prioritize the rights of leaseholders. What followed was the longest and one of the most bitter debates in the history of the Australian Senate. Despite this political backlash, the legacy of the Wik decision is profound. It confirmed that native title wasn't some fragile right that was easily broken. It forced the nation to grapple with the complex reality of sharing land and establish that Indigenous rights could coexist alongside other interests. The decision gave the Wik people and other Indigenous groups more legal power to negotiate for their land, protect their cultural heritage, and finally have a say in the future of their country. The fight is far from over, but the Wik people's struggle changed the legal and political landscape of Australia forever. If you believe these are the kinds of stories that need to be told, and that a deeper understanding of our shared history is vital, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the histories that have shaped our world. And let us know in the comments, was any part of this story taught to you in school? The story of the Wik people is a powerful testament to endurance. It's a narrative that stretches from the ancient past through a violent first contact, the slow grind of dispossession, all the way to a historic legal triumph. Their victory wasn't just for themselves, but for all Indigenous Australians. It's a story that challenges the simple, sanitized version of history many of us were taught and forces us to see the country and its laws in a new light. It shows that even after centuries of being silenced, a people's connection to their land can endure, and their voices can rise to change a nation.